Hi guys, and welcome to Needle and Threads, and today's tutorial is about machine felting. So if you've got a felting machine, or as I've got an attachment for my Bunting machine which will turn it into a felting machine, then you can follow on with the instructions. Otherwise you could use this with a hand felting tool. So to start with then, I've just downloaded a drawing pattern from the internet of a robin, and I'm going to do this on a calico piece of fabric, but I do need some stability as the calico is not thick enough. Something like denim weight would work without a backing, so I've got a piece of cheap felt as my backing to this piece. I've put my pattern underneath. If you can't see it, you could put it up to your window and use that as a natural window box, and just very loosely I've drawn round with a water soluble pen. Now I have got some felt tops here in robin colours, and you could use those, but I've already done my bunting and I used a real natural wool top which is a lot hairier, and I've got them in a little bit more contemporary colours for my robin, which is what I'm going to use today, so either or. And do remember then that you can use your hand tools to follow along with this project if you don't have the facility to do it on your machine. To start with then, I'm just going to pull some of the wool tops off, wool roving, and just lay it down roughly where I want it. This is just in preparation so that I can just pick up the pieces and carry on felting as I'm going. So that looks about enough that I want for my project. And do remember, if you cannot go on to the next stage of using it with a machine, then you can always use the hand tools that we've talked about in the felted poppies a few weeks ago. So you'll need a nice thick piece of foam or a felting brush to pop your project onto. Don't forget, this is backed with a piece of felt, and you can carry on exactly as I show with the film, only we're doing it the slower version using your hand tools. But we're going to move on to the Bunting machine that I've got and the attachments that turn your sewing machine into a felting machine. Now I only know of a Bunting that does this, but there may be some other models. You would need to do some research. So we've got a needle foot here to protect your fingers from the needles. We've got a needle plate. We've got our felting needle attachment, and we've also got a large screw. So let's go over to the machine and see how that's going to work. First of all, we will need to take our bobbin out, and we will also need to take out the inside. So we're just going to open that up and we're going to pull out the shuttle. So we need to pull that out in preparation first and just close all that up. It does get an awful lot of felt in the bottom with this, so we are going to need to clean the machine after we've finished. So we're going to take off the foot, and we're also going to take off the needle plate. So we put on our new needle plate, and you can see you've got a much larger hole on this than your traditional one. We unscrew our needle and we take the needle screw out, and then with our tool, here's our needle arm. With our felting tool needles, we've got a nice big cap there that slides over the needle arm. So we're going to slide that into position, and then with that very large screw we re-screw that up nice and tight, and that fits your needles in. And just make sure that you've got clearance before we move on to do some stitching. So just make sure it's fitting in the hole and not catching. The needles are quite easy to break. And then we're going to put our foot guide on, which helps stop getting your fingers caught. The final thing to remember is that we do need to drop those feed dogs like you would for machine embroidery. So we're ready now to start stitching. We still need to lower that foot, that will protect your fingers, and I find a stiletto or a flat screwdriver is handy while I am doing my felting. So your hands nice and firmly over the side. Now I started a little bit too tentatively. You do need to go quite fast with this, otherwise you tend to break a needle, which is what I did within the first few seconds. But no worries, we can still work with the other 4 needles that we've got. So do go faster with your machine, otherwise you drag and you break your needles very easily. So it's punching away like we would be doing if we were doing it by hand. But of course, by doing it by machine, we're doing it so much faster. So we're punching away, and because I'm doing a bird and a design that I want to do, I just use that stiletto and just keep pushing in bits where I want them to be. And there we go, we're felting nicely into the shape that we want. If we do go over the lines, don't worry, those lines are going to disappear with a little bit of water because we've used our water soluble pen, and we can always cover over with the next colour. So I'm just gently getting the shape of that, loosely felting it into place. So if you haven't got this machine, or you haven't got a felting machine, then you can carry along with this project by hand with your hand tools. What the machine does is just speed up the process very, very quickly. So it would be something then, if you really are into felting, it's worth the investment. But an embellisher machine, or actually this tool for the sewing machine, is really quite expensive. So you need to be an enthusiastic felter. Now what we're doing, as we would do with our hand felting, is we're going along the back as well, and that is pushing the fibres back through to the top and knitting them together. And then we need to go one more time over the top, as we would have to do with hand felting. So if we only just did it on the surface, you can actually pull the felt off. So by going from the front to the back, at the front, we're really knitting and felting them fibres together. So I can see I've got a little bit of a gap here, so I'm just going to add a little bit more felt in there where it's shrunk as it's been felting. So we'll just pop another piece in there and carry on. So if you've got any gaps or spaces, just add a little bit more felt over the top and keep going. Here we have our first colour laid down and felted, and remember, if you don't have the machine tool, you could follow along with this project with your hand tool. So we're going to move on then to the breast of the robin, and I'm using my contemporary burgundy colour. You can use a red if you wish to. So we're going to put our burgundy down on here, and we're going to carry on with our felting. So just laying it down, again just manipulating the felt till you're happy with it. Bring it under your needles, and then we're just going to go round the outside a bit, just fix it into place. And again, using a flat screwdriver or your stiletto, just manipulating it into place as we felt it down. And you can see as it is felting, it does shrink the felt as it's going in. So I'm just sort of pulling it into place where I want it and carry on felting. So we're going to work our way down with our robin's breast. Okay, so we've moved down to put in our breast, and we're going to felt the back. I just want to show you a close-up look. Can you see on the first it's actually pushed the fibres through the felt? Now we could actually pull it off. So we need to felt, so we're pushing those fibres back through the front of our work, and that is giving it its permanence. And then we go back to the front of it again. See how it's all pushed it back in again, and we go over to the front and we work again. You can see those fibres have pushed through to the front now, and we refelt before we're finished. So we must always do that from the front to the back and the front again. So we've finished putting the breast in, but we've got a really hard line here. Now it depends, do you want a hard line or don't you want a hard line? So if you want to soften and blend your felting layers between, I've just laid a little bit of the beige felt over that burgundy, and that is going to soften that hard line that we've created. I actually want a hard line, but just to give you an idea, that softens it up so that they blend into each other. Finally then, I'm going to move on to the grey wing, so I'm not going to take too much time with this. It's the same as we've done the other two pieces. We can manipulate it with our tool, and we felt it from the front, then the back, and then the front again. Looking at our wing now, we can add some detail if we want to, so we can either use some knitting yarn, which works just as well. You can blend in pieces of fabric as well. I'm going to use some of the wool, and I'm just wound it round, and I'm going to put some wing detail into it now. Now you can do this with the felting machine. Sometimes these little delicate pieces are much easier to just do with a single tool, and that is the difference between an embellisher machine and this tool that I'm using. So an embellisher machine, we can use multiple needles or a single needle by changing the plate over, which I haven't got that duality with the sewing machine. Now I pulled off this bit because I'd forgot to show you that we can actually put fabrics into our embellishments. So I'm using a little bit of felt, and if you want something a little bit more three-dimensional, you can leave it flapping in the wind, so to speak. But I don't want that. I'm going to take that off, and I'm just going to use a little bit of the wool tops. Dampen your fingers to roll it up so that it holds its shape when you're doing something small like this. And I would be going over to my single needle tool if I was doing it by hand. So we're just going to pop the beak in, and again with the eye they can be quite tricky, so I'm going to roll it into a strand, and I'm going to roll up a little bit to create my eye. There we go. So we're going to give him a nice big eye, I think. Pop it on there. I've left a strand so that I can actually hold it in place. I can either pull that off or use my stiletto tool to push it back in. So I think the eye needs to be a little bit bigger, and I'd also like to see a little white glint in it, which brings the eye to life. So I've got a teeny weeny bit of white felt here, and I really do need to moisten my fingers and roll it into a little ball like so. And again, I would find my single tool by hand easier to do this than the embellisher machine, but just to show you, there we go. So I'd use that with my little tool, really would be easier. Okay, so there is our felted robin. So I hope you enjoyed that. So next time we're going to carry on with the next video and do some pre-motion embroidery around that robin, and I'm also going to show you by machine or hand to make this little Christmas robin brooch. So till then, take care.